All right, welcome back. It's March 3rd, 2026. Continuing on with the left elevator, I'll show you what we're doing. So this piece that goes underneath the left elevator is for the electric trim servo. That's the box. And basically what we're trying to do is measure up where they're supposed to go, these brackets that attach the servo. The one that they give you in the plans is 1 3/8 is a little off. I actually ended up moving it about I think it was like 3/16 this way, because otherwise this actual actuator wasn't quite aligned with the hole. So we moved that. Next up is going to be clamping these brackets on and drilling the holes. All right, I've got the servo fit to the kind of cover plate, and I drilled all the holes, cleat got everything in place, and it looks to be pretty good. It's almost perfectly centered. Now I'm gonna take this all off and then dimple the 6 holes, and then we can send these brackets off, prime them, and then we'll be ready to rivet that on. All right, we moved on to bending part of the elevator skin where the trim tab is gonna sit up against. So these 2 tabs here and there have to be bent. So what I've done is I cut a block to put inside the skin, and then another one up top, marched the bend line, clamped it to the table. And now I'm just gonna take a piece of wood and slowly try to work that skin down with the mallet, and hopefully it bends real nicely against there. We'll find out. All right, we got this first one bent down. As far as I can tell, it looks pretty darn good. I was really worried about getting a crack in that there. Let's see. Right there, but it didn't crack or anything, so we're good so far. Now we gotta try to get this bottom one bent up. All right, there is the bends all done. Again, I was a little worried on that tip part there because it was kind of getting to be a sharp bend, but it looks to be pretty good. We'll get it riveted together when that point comes, and then we'll really see how it turns out. All right, since that's all done, the next step is to start riveting the left elevator together. We'll have doing the trim tab stuff a little later on. We're trying to figure out when they want you to rivet this. I'm not totally sure yet, so I'm kind of waiting on that. The one thing that we did change here is this is the bottom of the left elevator. We had bent it backwards basically, where the bottom part overlapped the top. So we just spread it apart and did it the other way. That way it sheds water and no water gets into there. So now we're on to riveting the left elevator. All right, to catch you guys up on where we're at, we've got all the doublers onto the spars with the nut plates on the backside. We've got the control horn in, and now we're riveting the skin to all that understructure and yeah, we're basically gonna do the skin, then we'll get the spar that goes for the trim tab, and that's about it. March 4th, we're back in the hangar. I'm just finished recording part 1, which is kind of prepping these elevators. And I just realized I didn't record a video to show you what we finished yesterday. It was just the time lapse, so here it is. Here we got the left elevator pretty much all riveted together. We left this last rivet in the end open because that's a really tight one. And so we're still thinking of how we're gonna get that. We still have to do the trim tab, which we're gonna start working on now. And then we have to bend basically the hinge part of it. Where we're at in the plans building the trim tab is this part. So the first step is going to be bending the trailing edge of the tab itself. Well, I've heard this is a pain in the ass part, but we've got it done. This one could have used a little more, but it is bent pretty darn well. See that? This side's especially good. The tabs were a little bigger, and I used the air hammer for the last little bit. But yeah, there's our trim tab. It's perfect. We're just gonna bend the trailing edge just a little bit, just to help it sit a little better. And then we'll see what the next step is. So what we've got going here is the trim tab inboard and outboard horn are attached from the holes that were pre-punched in this E011. And now we have to drill 1, 2, 3 holes into the, we're gonna clamp this together right now, into the spar, or into the trim tab spar, which is right in here, into that spar, and also through the skin. All right, what we've got going on here is this is the spar and the hinge that attaches it. And so we are basically going down, we clamped the hinge in place, and now we're drilling all the holes. Then we'll have to cut this thing to size. A little bit on the end needs to be cut off, and that allows for the entire thing to be, the end of it to be bent down and safety wired to the spar. That'll make more sense later. Okay, we've got the piano hinge drilled. The one thing that we did was on the last video, we had it flipped the other way around like this with the eyelets on top. They want the eyelets on the bottom. So I flipped that around. So now it sits like that, and then the trim tab would be on there, and that would pivot off the elevator. Marked out this portion that needs to be cut off. Just have to remember to remove the rod before doing that, because that rod's going to be bent down and safety wired to the spar. I just realized I did make a little bit of a mistake. This was not supposed to be dimpled. They said to countersink it, and I wasn't sure why. I ended up dimpling it because I thought the thickness was okay. Long story short, the reason they have you countersink it is because it sits on top of this. And I thought they would have you countersink this, but they don't. So they just wanted you to countersink the spar. I'm gonna have to now countersink this since I dimpled these holes. So not a big deal. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. This is plenty thick, so that shouldn't be a problem. If the integrity of it is compromised, then I'll just order a new spar, but it looks to be pretty good as of now. But I've got the hinge countersunk where it goes onto the trim tab spar. And so ideally, if you did this right, these don't get dimpled. They get countersunk, and then this thing stays, just like a normal piece, no countersink, no dimple. This has got so much material that I don't think it'll be an issue. I can check with Vance to make sure, but I'm gonna keep moving along. All right, the step that I just got to here was to trim the E717 and 18 inboard and outboard trim tab horns. And basically, if you're using a manual trim assembly, you're gonna use the further out hole. And if you're using electronic trim, you're gonna use the closer one. Well, the brackets that they sent are on the shelf over there. They have both on there, so you have to trim them. But in the electric trim kit, they send you the ones for the electric trim, so that's really nice. I just swapped them over. I've dimpled the trim tab skin. This is all done. These are dimpled. So now it's time to cut the hinge on the spot that I marked, and then we'll be able to scuff everything up and prime it for riveting tomorrow. That's it for today. All these parts are ready to be sent off and primed. I'm not gonna prime the hinge. I'm gonna reprime the trim cover plate just because I marked it up and drilled it, so I'm just gonna spray it once more. And tomorrow we should be ready to rivet everything together. Welcome back, it's March 5th. We are finishing the elevators tonight.
And then going out to celebrate.
The first step is going to be riveting the trim tab to the spar, the trim tab spar, and then riveting the elevator trim tab horns onto the tab as well. Okay, we've got the trim brackets, the control horns riveted on, and the spar riveted to the lower edge of the trim tab. Now we're gonna grab this and the hinge and start working on putting it on the actual elevator. All right, well, Dad f***ed up another part. We had a spare hinge and he f***ed up by cutting it too short. This thing is too short, as you can see. It doesn't reach that end hole. So, got to order actually 2 of those because I owe my buddy one and one for my airplane. Gonna order 2 of those. We're gonna go ahead and start riveting the right side, which is thankfully easier. All right, last night ended terribly. We screwed up the trim tab hinge, and today we've been working on it for actually a few hours, just haven't recorded much. We riveted the entire right elevator. It went smooth. It was easier after doing the left. Definitely easier than the left as well. I'll show that to you. And then the other thing we did was mounted this trim servo onto the bracket. And so I'll show you where we're at. Basically, as far as the hinge goes, I ordered a new one and I overnighted it. We'll see when it gets here, but as soon as that's here, everything's done. So we've worked for about 4 hours already today. I've got the trim servo mounted and it looks good. I gotta still test it. And then if you look over here, this is the right elevator. It's upside down, but that's all done. Left elevator's all done. Now the big thing that we gotta do is figure out how to get this trim servo inside of there. There's a reason they tell you to put it on while you're building it, before the thing gets riveted together. But there is a way to get it in there, it's just a pain in the ass. So we're gonna work on that. All right, we've got the trim motor installed. I decided to drill a hole here. A few other builders did that. That way the wires aren't interfering with the jack screw for the trim. So I just left us a little note that we need a bushing for that. This bushing comes with the fuselage kit, or the finishing kit rather. So I think we're gonna move on to rolling the leading edges, and that's pretty much it for the elevators. Alrighty, that's the end of the day. There's the left elevator upside down, there's the right. And we got the trailing edges of both of them rolled. So that's good. Got the counterweight installed on the right and torqued down. That's pretty much it for the elevators. Next time we'll probably be working on the trim tab. And we'll see, we gotta put like the rod end bearings in where it'll attach to the horizontal stab and that sort of thing, but it's getting there. All right, it's Sunday, March 8th, 2026. Today, since we don't have the hinge in yet for the trim tab, I'm just finishing up a few odd ends that I got in my notes on the entire empennage. I'll show you what's first. So the first thing is 3 rivets here that I kind of butchered on the horizontal stab. I'm gonna drill those out and redo them. Once I'm done with that, there's a portion on the end of this that has to be cut out. I'll try to find a dimension on it. It shows something in the plans on that. That'll allow those control horns on the elevator right there to kind of swing freely. Otherwise, if you mount them up right now, they won't move at all. There's a portion on each side that's got to be cut out. So I'm going to do that. Then I'll install the rod end bearings on the elevators, and I'll probably mount it up onto there and make sure that it all swings freely. All right, I've got the bolts installed in the control rods. So the right elevator's mounted. Now it's time to do what I was talking about earlier, where as you can see, this counterbalance tab kind of sits underneath the horizontal stab. So that has to be cut like that. And we need a minimum of 1/8 inch between the end of this and the end of the counterbalance tab. So that's what we're working on now. All right, I've got this marked up. So that would be, that little line right there is flush with the counterbalance tab. So we need an 1/8 inch minimum. So that's an 1/8 inch. I'm gonna cut on the inside of that line. I'm gonna drill a relief hole there, 1/8 inch, and then cut that one straight. And we'll see how it turns out. I got this thing flipped around, so I've marked both sides for the right, and then if this works out well, which hopefully it does, I gotta do the left. I've got them cut out. I took the elevator off. This one's perfect. I took a 5/32 file and hit it there. Probably should use an 1/8 inch, but whatever. To round that corner nice. And I just measured up with this thing to get that corner rounded. So that one is literally perfect. The one below, I went a little too deep on the round file, but shouldn't be an issue. I don't think we'll have any cracking problems. So now I'm on to mount the left one and rinse and repeat on the left side. All right, we got both of these cut out and grinded. They're damn near perfect. Now I'm doing the little piece that needs to be cut for the control horns. So I got to cut into there and then kind of straighten it out. All right, we've got that cut out and filed. Looks pretty good. Now we're gonna mount this bearing back on. All right, here's where we're sitting. We got the bearing on there, and we've mounted the right one since that one's done. The next step on the right is gonna be drilling through that bearing into the control horn. And what we're working on now is Dad brought the long hinge in that came from Vans that we screwed up a bunch. So I've got 18 inches cut for my friend. I've got 20 inches for ours, so we have enough space, enough extra rod to make that bend that we need to. And so we're gonna take that to the bandsaw, get that bent, and then continue to work on the trim tab. All right, we've got the hinge cut to size. Now we're gonna clamp it on and start drilling those holes. We're getting the trim tab fitted to the left elevator. So we've got the holes drilled in the elevator side. Now we got to countersink those. We've already got those ones countersunk. Again, this is not in accordance with the plans, but I did call Vans, and they said it could actually be stronger this way, and it should be good as long as I don't over countersink. So that's where we're at. Just got to countersink those, and I think we're up to riveting. All right, here's where we are. We got the 2 blind rivets into the end of there, and now we're going to rivet the hinge to the underside of the trim tab. All right, we've got the hinge riveted onto there. Looks good. Got the 3 blind rivets in on that end, 1 on that end, and the 2 in there. Now we're riveting the other hinge onto the left elevator. Okay, well, I don't even want to talk about how long that took, but we got the hinge installed on the trim tab. And let's see here, I'll flip it up. There she is. So got the rivets in at the end, got the blind rivets in down there. So that's pretty much it for the tail. We got a few little things here and there, tighten up the rod end bearings and make sure everything fits properly, make adjustments where needed, test the flight control play, drill through that bearing. But that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. All right, back in the hangar, continuing to wrap up a few odd ends on the elevators. We've got the hinge installed last night. I just took it off because I had to bend that lower part there. That lower part needs to be able to travel underneath into the rib. So that's bent. Now the trim tab has full travel. I kind of bent it so that there's just enough to where it would actually hit the bent part before my control horn hit the skin. So it's right there. That should be pretty good. What we're gonna do now is bend the rod kind of forward and then down and drill a hole right here and then safety wire the rod onto there. Okay, I've got the trim tab hinge bent and safety wired to the spar. So that's all done. The next step that we're gonna do here is hook up both these to the horizontal stabilizer, and then we'll test the kind of control throw. And they gave some information in the manual about that. All right, I've got the left and right elevator mounted onto the horizontal stabilizer. And the first thing I did was kind of eyeball down the edge of it here and to see if I could tell if one of them was sticking out more than the other, and I needed to adjust the rod end bearings in there, but they are darn close. The next thing that I did was I measured the row of rivets on each one because they are pretty much identical on the interior. So I measured the distance there, the distance there, and then there and there. And they were all within a 1/16 of an inch. That one could maybe be turned in a 1/16 of an inch, but I think even one turn's gonna be more than that. So it's about as good as I'm gonna get. Now I'm gonna finish reading through section 15 here, which is talks about flight control throw, and we will see exactly how much throw we're supposed to have and how we're gonna measure that. Okay, I have put both elevators on. I've tested the control throw. I had to adjust the rod end bearings at each one just a little bit. Basically where I'm sitting is the right elevator goes 29 degrees up, 34 down. The left is 30 up, 31 down. Those are both giving me the maximum allowable tolerances for what the manual says. And then later on, when we attach this to the fuselage, there's going to be stops that I can adjust to get it exactly within tolerances. But I just wanted to make sure that it threw both ways all the way. The last step of the elevator, which I'm starting to do right now, is drilling through this bearing into the control horns. And so you need a bushing that fits in there. Thankfully, my friend who built that RV9 has this 1/4 inch number 30. They say to drill a pilot hole to number 40. I'm just gonna do a number 30 since that's what this is. But this fits perfectly in there. And so that'll allow me to drill right into the control horn and then take it off. And then we'll be enlarging it to a 1/4 inch for this bolt. So that's where we're at. All right, so there's the first one drilled. As you can see, worked out pretty well. That's all the time I got for tonight, so we'll finish this up tomorrow morning. Basically just have to enlarge that one and then do the same exact thing on for the left elevator. Okay, today is March 11th, 2026. We just have been in the shop for about an hour or so. I've got both holes drilled through the control horns. I installed the bolt and I tightened it down for now. We'll do some fine tuning when we mount this to the fuselage. I've got the bolts into the rod end bearings, but no nuts on them yet. I've just taped them on there as a reminder. So that completes the tail. There she is. The horizontal stab, elevators, rudder, and vertical stab. And we now have wood to build our wing jig. So that's what we're gonna be working on the rest of the day.